Red Cap's Corner in Philadelphia doing a Legacy deck tech, and we're talking with Anthony about his red-white Legacy Death and Taxes. How you doing, Anthony?
Good, how about you?
Not too bad. So why don't you run us through this deck? We'll start with the mana base. So what's going on here?
All right, so we have the actual colored sources, of course. We have the planes, 3 planes I'm playing right now, and 2 plateaus. That's all you really need for the red splash. You could go for one more. You also have the Cavern of Souls. You can name human, which gets both of your red creatures.
Okay.
And then you have Karakas, which is great with Thalia and your opponent's creatures. So it's great against Reanimator and Sneak and Show, or anybody that's playing anything legendary. Occasionally useful against Vendilion Click or something like that.
Okay.
Remove a blocker, but not
Right,
ideal.
maybe a Gaddock Teague or
Yeah, exactly.
any of the various other legendary creatures in Legacy.
It's also good against the mirror, ruining your opponent's Thalia. That's great too.
Yeah, that's got to be nice.
Then you have the colorless sources. We have rishadan Port, which is cutting off your opponent's mana base, and then also Wasteland, just destroys a land. Pretty clear.
Nice.
They're much better with Thalia or wingmare in play.
Now, have there been any additions due to Oath of the Gatewatch that you wanted to add, since now you actually have access to colorless mana in your deck?
I've thought about using Warping Whale. Any of the things that require colorless mana, I'm not going for because I am playing Magus of the Moon. It's not a guarantee that I'll have the colorless source.
Right.
I don't want to get caught under it.
I know a lot of people have been talking about Eldrazi Displacer for Death and Taxes decks.
It's definitely useful, especially with Imperial Recruiter. Using a Flickr Wisp again, that allows it to just constantly remove something. There's also other useful, renaming a revoker.
Right. Oh, that's a good one. So the deck is based around Aether Vial, right?
Yeah, that's how it started. It was a chance to break Aether Vial.
All right, so let's look at your creature suite that you're going to be able to put into play off of Aether Vial. So you only have one drop in the deck, and that's Mother of Runes.
Yeah, you don't really want to go too deep on 1-drops. Most of the taxing creatures cost 2 or 3. So you don't want to keep it on 1. You really just want to get the Mother of Runes out there and then move on to 2. Most of your powerful spells are on 2. The filing in a revoker is huge because you can do it in response to them actually casting the spell. Like, for example, Liliana. That's a big one.
That's definitely a big one. Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Jace the Mind Sculptor against Miracles.
And maybe some equipment if you're in a mirror match and your opponent gets them out before you, possibly.
Yeah, exactly. Or just GTA against any deck that's playing it. If you're playing against Stoneforge, you can name Stoneforge, even though it hits you.
Right.
If they have a batterskull, or if they get the umezawa's GTA, which is obvious, you just name GTA even if it hits your own.
And what applications does Phyrexian Revoker give you that, say, something like Needle wouldn't? So what are some of the things that you could possibly play against where Phyrexian Revoker is going to be really good, where even if you had Pithing Needle, it wouldn't be the same thing?
Really the best against the being able to name mana abilities is best against Lion's Eye Diamond. So you can stop Storm. Like, really, the only card that game 1 is going to completely lock out Storm is Thalia. I mean, not completely, but Thalia, Port, those are the kind of things you want. But then also having Revoker, it's pretty nice.
All right.
And also, it doesn't get hit by any -1/-1 effects that only affect white creatures.
Right.
It's colorless. That's useful against Affinity, which is also strange, but it's come up before.
So let's talk about Stoneforge Mystic and the package of equipment that you have for that card.
Yeah, you're not trying to win particularly fast, so Stoneforge is a fine win condition. It also helps you control the board more. Umezawa's GTA is just great against any creature deck. Sword of Fire and Ice wins the fastest and gets you extra cards. It's huge against something like Miracles. You're going to want to get that immediately. It's also good against, it's great against Merfolk. They really can't beat you unless they have multiple true names, if you have that card out. And then Batterskull is just good to get if you don't know what you're up against. Gaining life is really useful. It's a great blocker.
Definitely.
But it can get caught in your hand. Playing it behind a Thalia means it costs 6, and you're not always going to have that Stoneforge.
Right.
If they have swords or you're playing against like a burn deck, it's really risky.
All right. Let's talk about some of the applications of Flickr Wisp in the deck as one of your 3-drops. In fact, it's the only 3-drop that you're running a full playset of.
Yeah, Flickr Wisp is amazing, especially off Vial. So it's good to just, get another Germ token for your Batterskull, get another equipment from your Stoneforge Mystic. It's great with Imperial Recruiter, you get even more card advantage. But it's really at its best when you get to Vial it in. You can get rid of something for their entire turn. Like if they have an equipment, you can make it so they can't use it that combat. You can remove a land if that's necessary. just for like an extra port activation, essentially.
Yeah, that can be really relevant in your opponent's upkeep.
Yeah.
Porting, wastelanding, and then flicker wisping their lands.
Yeah, it works great. It also saves your creatures from removal. It can, if you're playing Mangara, you can use that as a second way to get Mangara back as opposed to just the karakas.
Right.
It's just a flyer. A 3/1 flyer is actually pretty relevant, especially when you have equipment in play.
Yeah, I think Flickr Wisp is also just really good against the Delver strategies. Not only can a Flickr Wisp trade with the Delver, but also gets to exile it and then flip it back into its original form.
Yeah, it's usually good if you're playing against something like Rug Delver. You can flicker away their Tarmogoyf if they're attacking with that and then trade with a Delver.
Yeah.
So it's not a clean like 2-for-1, but you can get a lot of card advantage out of it.
Let's talk about some of the other 3-drops. All these ones are 1-ofs. So what do you like about them? What matchups are they good against? And why are there only 1 of each copy?
There's 1 of each copy so that I can search for it with Recruiter. None of these cards are essential. Like, I don't need vryn, wingmare, or mirrian crusader to win the game.
Right.
Fiend Hunter is even more niche.
Gotta love Imperial Recruiter.
Yeah. So if you have a vial with Imperial Recruiter, you can get one of these really quick. Vryn Wingmare is just continuing to do what the deck already does. It's great against anything that's playing a lot of non-creature spells. It's great to go Thalia into Vryn Wingmare because it makes removal cost 3 naturally. And it also has flying, so you can search that up. You can block. The only creature that you can't search for is Flickr Wisp if you have an Imperial Recruiter. So that you can get it to get past blockers. You can get it to block a Delver. It's just useful that it has flying.
Nice.
Mirrian Crusader is another one that it's not great in multiples. Like, it's great with equipment, and it's great against decks that are playing green creatures.
Any Abrupt Decay decks or any Deathrite Shaman-based strategies?
Yeah, and it also wins the quickest for a 2-mana creature. Or a 2-power
That's true.
creature,
With an equipment on it, it can kind of go nuts. Let's talk about some of the interactions between Mirrian Crusader and stuff like Jitte or even Sword of Fire and Ice.
Yeah, you'll get 2 activations because you're doing damage twice. The other great thing is you can use Umezawa's Jitte. After the first strike damage, you get counters. You can give it plus,
I think a lot of people
+4,
don't
+4.
think about dealing the first strike damage, and then so you deal 2 on the first strike damage, and then you can pump it again to deal 6 on the second strike, and then you're still going to get 2 more counters afterwards.
Yeah, so you get just so much value off that. Getting 2 cards of Sword of Fire and Ice, which also gives a protection from everything but white. So it's really hard to get to kill, to block, anything like that. Batterskull, gaining 10 life.
Yeah. Well,
and
12 life, right?
Yeah, 12 life.
Yeah. That's a lot of damage and a lot of life. It's a huge swing.
Yeah, plus Vigilance is really useful. It becomes a great blocker again because it's huge and does double strike damage.
Oh, definitely. What about the Fiend Hunter?
Fiend
Obviously,
Hunter,
it's a great Imperial Recruiter target.
it is really only an Imperial Recruiter target. It's not the best removal, but it is a solid 1/3. It doesn't get hit by Punishing Fire, which comes up often. I've also used it to violin and save one of my other creatures from a Terminus, but that's also risky. It's really good when you need to get one final swing through.
And then you also have the interaction with Flickr Wisp.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can exile something, and then with that trigger on the stack, you can blink it with a Flickr Wisp, and then that creature's exiled permanently.
And yeah, that's another way that Flickr Wisp is great off of the vial. But the biggest target that I have for Imperial Recruiter is definitely Magus of the Moon.
Yeah, it's got to be the main reason for splashing red in a deck like this.
Yeah, I mean, Imperial Recruiter is great. You get to search for basically all of your creatures, and it gives you some card advantage, which the deck has really not a lot of. It's basically Stoneforge and Imperial Recruiter.
Yeah, and it seems like you really want to get your vials up to 3, or at least one of your vials up to 3. And that way you can still put them into play even if you don't have a Plateau or a Cavern of Souls on human.
I mean, that's the ideal situation because they can't counter it. Against bug decks specifically,
yeah.
they're not running a lot of basics. They might not search for it if you vial it in. It's still a little bit surprising. Like, people don't expect it. I've gotten people in tournaments just because they didn't know Magus of the Moon was coming. Like, they saw the red splash but didn't know it that well.
Right.
As it gets more popular, that's not going to work as well.
Yeah, and a Blood Moon effect in Legacy can just shut a lot of decks down.
Yeah.
Even in a lot of matchups where you wouldn't expect Blood Moon to be as good against like Elves or any other decks that are running only a few basics, but a lot of spell lands. Like, it shuts down their Gaia's Cradles and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. It was also really good against Enchantress for the same thing.
Oh yeah, shutting down the Sarah's Sanctum. Yeah.
The other thing is you can pretty much operate. You just have to fetch one basic. You don't really have a lot of double white. You have the Fiend Hunter and the Mirrian Crusader, but those are really at their best when they're vialed in. And then Flickr Wisp. So it does make it a bit harder to play Flickr Wisp.
Yeah, I can see that being an issue.
Yeah, and it's also the best thing to have for getting Magus to the Moon is to name human on a Cavern of Souls, because that means you're getting uncounterable creatures on the way up to 3. You're not forced to fetch that plateau.
Right.
But it does leave you a little bit susceptible to wasteland. If they
That's
waste
fair.
off your red source, it's not great.
That's
And
very true.
The final card, or the final set of cards, is the Swords to Plowshares, which is just great removal.
Yeah, I mean, Swords to Plowshares, classic. It's one of the best removal spells in the game.
Yeah.
You can't really go wrong with exiling something for 1 white mana at instant speed. And yeah, they gain life, but a lot of people think of Death and Taxes as an aggro or white weenie deck where it's more of a mid-range or controlling type of strategy.
I definitely think it's a control deck. I don't think there's any situation where you just need to straight race your opponent. Like, it can happen. The deck can win by just having more creatures or getting a really early GT or something like that. But it's never your game plan to just go straight creature aggro.
Right. All right, let's move on to the sideboard. So you're running an Enlightened Tutor, which I always find extremely interesting. So let's talk about some of your E-Tutor targets and what matchups you might bring them in against.
Yeah, so for right now I'm using the E-Tutor. I'm going to try some other weird things. Because this deck is not that popular, the red splash version, the sideboard is all kind of my creation and it's still constantly being tested. So I have the E-Tutor there right now for Ratchet Bomb, which is good. It's a little slow, but you don't have a lot of access to multiple colors of mana.
Right.
So you can't play engineered explosives.
Can deal with tokens really quickly.
Yeah.
It's good against probably miracles or empty the warren strategies.
Exactly. And Delver, getting multiple flip
Yeah,
Delvers
flip
or something
Delvers.
like that. Especially, or a young Pyromancer, you get the Delvers and the tokens.
Yeah.
And you can also search for Rest in Peace. It seems like my Rest in Pieces die a lot, so I want more than one. And I want to just draw it naturally.
And that's good against any Reanimator decks or even like Rug Delver with Tarmogoyf or Nimble Mongoose.
Yeah, I'll bring it in against Rug Delver or some of the other Delver strategies when they're big on Tarmogoyf and Deathrite Shaman. It's also great against Punishing Fire decks. So lands can't really beat this card.
Yeah. And it can make like Gurmag Angler uncastable in like the
Exactly.
Grixis Delver decks.
And then
Ethersworn Canonist, right?
Ethersworn Canonist is, I was going to say Ethersworn Canonist is great against Storm, anything like that. They're trying to play a lot. But you can also search for stuff if you need to use your equipment, anything that's already in the main deck.
Yeah,
you can
so
also
you
get Revoker.
Yeah, you have Revoker, any of the equipment, and then Vial, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little slow to be tutoring for Vial, but if you really need to get something through, it can work.
All right, so what about the red Elemental Blast? What are you bringing those in against?
Just any blue deck where I have bad cards in the main deck. It's great against something like Miracles, even though they'll probably counter it like if you get later in the game. But you can counter something like a True Name Nemesis, which they really didn't expect. Otherwise, you have to Council's Judgment it or something.
Yeah, True
like
Name
that.
seems like it could give you some grief if you don't have the Sword of Fire and Ice out.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of blue decks, like it's Legacy.
Yeah,
so
for
it's
sure.
just going to be good against most things.
So let's talk about Containment Priest, because I love this card and I find it really interesting in the Death and Taxes decks.
Yeah, some people even bring it in against me because they think it's going to be good because it shuts off Vial, but it is really good against any big creature deck. Like, I would rather not use Vial and just have Containment Priest against Sneak and Show. Like, I'll win eventually. It's fine that you are shutting off your own card. And it's also great with Flickr Wisp.
Yeah, it's got to be great with Flickr Wisp. That's got to be so much fun.
Yeah, it turns Flickr Wisp into just a straight removal spell.
I think it also, if you exile a creature with Fiend Hunter and you have Containment Priest in play, even if they kill your Fiend Hunter, they won't get the creature back.
Exactly.
So it has a little bit of synergy with Fiend Hunter as well.
Yeah, it can be really brutal against the decks that need to just use Sneak and Show, or use Sneak Attack, Show and Tell, anything like that.
Right. Reanimator.
Yeah.
Any of that stuff.
Elves.
Elves, that's a good one, yeah.
Elves, you need really any sideboard card you can get.
Green Sun Zenith in general.
Yeah.
Maybe Bug Nick Fit with Pod.
Exactly. It's great against Natural Order or anything like that.
Nice. And what about the third Magus of the Moon?
I didn't really like having 3 in the main deck. But
Okay.
against the decks that it wins against, you really want more than 2. Like, even just naturally drawing it is huge. It's great against lands, bug, anything like that. Lands specifically, you want more than 1 because they can just punish and fire it. So if you have more than 1, that means you can put 2 in play and then they can't get their punishing fire back. Anything like that. Like, it's not
It seems like Mom into Magus against lands is pretty brutal.
It's not the easiest card to keep on the table if they do have red.
What about Boil? What are you bringing Boil in against?
Boil is for miracles. I
love
really
that
want
card.
to. I want to kill their lands, but Cataclysm is so punishing against my deck now that I have fetch lands.
And you had mentioned about double white being difficult to cast.
Double white is tough, and this being an instant is also good. So if they tap out for something and they need their mana the next turn. Or if you want to do it on their turn, just so that you're untapped when they have no lands.
Right.
It's great. The other problem is like any other mass land destruction for 4 mana is going to hurt you. But this is just all upside. I mean, it's not going to get their other sources, but most decks are just playing blue.
I still can't get over the fact that that card's an instant. Like, it's kind of insane.
It is fantastic.
So Council's Judgment, what is that going to be coming in against?
It's really great against sideboard cards and stuff like True Name. It's great against any big threat that they aren't just going to kill you with all at once.
Right.
You can get rid of an Emrakul if you don't die immediately. You can get rid of just any enchantment or something that's going to lock you out. I've had it against Null Rod, which is
that seems like a good way to get rid of Null Rod.
If you really need your Vial, it can get rid of other things like that.
And now this is the only sideboard card that you actually have 3 of, which is Sudden Demise. Now I love this card. What do you bring in this one in against?
I bring this against Elves. That's the main reason it's in there. It can also be a 2-for-1 against other decks. It's great to just get 2 Delvers or a young Pyromancer on all of its tokens, granted that you might kill your Recruiter or something.
That's true.
It can be hard to cast. So only having the 1 red source, or 1 or 2 red sources available that could get wastelanded.
Right.
You can't cast it off Cavern or anything like that. That's what's great for creatures. But
Right.
if you do have the Magus in play, you can also use it for that.
Yeah, it seems like you could almost use Magus in your deck as a way to fix your mana to cast some of your sideboard spells that aren't creatures, like Sudden Demise, Boil, and Red Elemental Blast.
Yeah, it's really good for that. But only having to hit 2 mana to cast this against Elves and just destroying whatever the earliest play is, especially if they Green Sun for Dryad Arbor, killing one of their lands is great too.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, Elves is really the worst matchup for the deck. So you want to do everything you can to beat Elves.
That's
this
fair.
Has other value, like you can use it as a 1 or 2 of in other matchups.
Right. What are some of the other bad matchups for the deck?
Oh, any Belcher style deck, anything that's going all in, you don't have Force of Will.
Or like Tess or any really, really fast combo decks?
If Tess goes off before you can get down a Thalia, that's usually the race for any of the Storm decks, and or Tess. They really just have to go off before you can play Thalia or Revoker or Canonist or anything like that where you can get ahead.
Right. What are some of the best matchups for the deck?
The best matchup is Sneak and Show. Having karakas, stuff like that, being able to just have an answer for everything. If they do use Sneak Attack, you can Revoker it. You just have main deck answers to all of the stuff that they have. Other great matchups are Reanimator for the same reasons.
Right.
Any deck that's... Storm is great if you get to turn 2. I mean, but a lot of matchups are pretty 50-50. You kind of have to draw the right half of your deck.
That's fair. And with no deck manipulation or ways of drawing extra cards, then it could be tough to find what you need in those matchups. Hence Imperial Recruiter and Enlightened Tutor.
That's what they're in the deck to solve. I mean, there is inconsistency problems with the deck.
So what are some of your favorite cards in the deck, or cards that you might play that other Death and Taxes lists might not play?
Not a lot of people are playing Fiend Hunter. I like occasionally getting to use it. Nobody really expects it. If you violate a Fiend Hunter and remove their creature, it's going to be a good play. Because you can just, not really do anything about it.
Right.
I am not playing a lot of Vryn Wingmare. I don't think that the card is great for 3 mana. It's a little slow. I mean, I'm using it as a 1-of because I can search for it and it's flying, and it's also, like, occasionally just good on its own. But I don't think it's worth being a 4-of. Some people have been doing that in the mono white list. That's just my opinion.
Oh, that's valid.
And yeah, overall the red splash is kind of uncommon. So me playing Imperial Recruiters is just fantastic. Getting to Imperial Recruiter for an Imperial Recruiter against Miracles is probably one of the best things.
Terminus your board, which puts another Imperial Recruiter on the bottom, and then you just play the one in your hand.
Search for the other one and
chain it up.
Exactly. If you have an equipment, you just get to go right on there. Just have constant threats.
Right.
They can never fully get rid of you.
It's so annoying as a Miracles player.
Especially if they have to actually swords your Imperial Recruiter instead of a relevant creature.
It does not feel good to swords that 1/1 at all. So do you have any favorite moments while playing this deck, or any highlight moments?
I think my favorite is always just getting rid of everyone's lands. I mean,
It's
just wastelanding, and then porting. And then you have Thalia out where they literally can't do anything. Locking somebody out completely is fantastic. But with Magus of the Moon, you occasionally just land Magus of the Moon and they scoop immediately. It's great to have some 5-minute rounds.
Right.
This deck is usually really grindy, so you have to play for 40, 45 minutes every round finally getting to just get some time off to eat or whatever is fantastic.
It is always difficult, depending on what deck you're playing, to get food or a bathroom break in during tournaments.
Yeah, the
for
miracles
sure.
problems.
I know those all too well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony, for bringing in your red, white, Death and Taxes deck. Hopefully that was enjoyable for everybody at home. And if you're looking to get into Legacy or learn more about the deck, hopefully this was helpful. And if you want to get more content, make sure to check out our YouTube and Facebook channels for more modern, Legacy, and Cube videos.